Can you hear that? This deafening silence that approaches. No, it's because he hasn't arrived yet. But imagine, just for a moment, a not-so-distant future. The year is 2045. The world seems the same. People go about their routines, oblivious to the danger that literally hides beneath their feet. A danger that will not come with a bang, nor with dazzling lights in the sky. It will be a silent apocalypse, a slow-motion catastrophe that no one, absolutely no one, will hear coming. We are talking about the heart of our planet, the core of the Earth. That colossal sphere of incandescent metal, spinning incessantly for billions of years, responsible for much more than we imagine. What if he stopped? What if in 2045 the invisible engine that sustains our existence simply shut down? The consequences would be unimaginable, a domino effect that would redefine life as we know it, or rather extinguish it. It's not cheap science fiction, it's not a B-movie script. It's a terrifying possibility based on clues that the Earth itself gives us, on studies that try to decipher the deepest secrets of our cosmic home. What would happen to us with the air we breathe, with the oceans, with this protective shield that protects us from space? Get ready, because we're going to dive deep into this scary hypothesis. Let's explore what science knows and what it fears about the day when the Earth's heart might perhaps stop beating. It's a journey into the heart of our own impending doom. A glimpse into the silent apocalypse. Are you ready to face this uncomfortable truth? To understand what is really at stake in the depths of our planet? Look, I know it's a lot to absorb right away. It's the kind of information that makes us rethink everything, isn't it? And that's exactly why we're here. We want to unravel these mysteries together, understand the craziest and scariest what-ifs in the universe. If you're also fascinated by these issues, if you want to be prepared for any scenario, even the most unlikely, then you are in the right place. Do the following. Leave a like below to strengthen our work and show that you want more content like this, which challenges our imagination. And if you're not yet part of our community of cosmic explorers, click the subscribe button now and activate the bell. This way, you won't miss any of our trips through the most curious facts and the most shocking hypotheses in the universe. Oh, and share this video with that friend who loves a good conspiracy theory or simply enjoys blowing their mind with science and extreme possibilities. The more people know what could be coming, the better, right? I'm counting on you. Now, take a deep breath, because our descent into the core and the possible end of the world is just beginning. To understand the catastrophe that would cause the nucleus to stop, we first need to go very, very deep down. Imagine an impossible journey, crossing kilometers and kilometers of solid rock, passing through the hot, pasty mantle until reaching the absolute center of our planet. There, almost 3,000 kilometers below our feet, lies the beating heart of the Earth, the core. It is not a heart of flesh and blood, of course, but a gigantic sphere, almost the size of the planet Mars, composed mainly of very heavy metals, such as iron around 80% and nickel with traces of other elements. It is a place of unimaginable extremes. The pressure is millions of times greater than what we feel here on the surface, overwhelming to the point of transforming the behavior of matter. And the temperature? The temperature rivals the surface of the sun, reaching peaks of up to 6,000 degrees Celsius. It's a literal hell right beneath us. But this core is not just one thing, it is divided into two distinct parts, like the yolk and white of a cosmic egg. Right in the center, we have the inner core. Despite the absurd heat, the colossal pressure keeps it solid. A ball of almost pure iron and nickel, dense, compact, spinning like a red-hot top. Surrounding this solid sphere, we have the outer core. Here, the pressure is slightly lower, enough for the iron and nickel to exist in a liquid state. Think of an underground ocean of molten metal, turbulent, with constantly moving currents and eddies. It is a natural dynamo of planetary proportions. And here's the crucial point: this core is not still, it spins. Both the solid inner core and the liquid outer core are rotating, but they don't rotate at exactly the same speed as the rest of the planet, as we do here on the surface. The inner core, that solid ball, appears to have its own speed, sometimes spinning a little faster, Sometimes, as recent and controversial studies suggest, even slowing down or almost stopping relative to the mantle above it. The liquid outer core, in turn, is in constant agitation, a chaotic flow of molten metal. This complex dance, this differential rotation between the layers of the core and the rest of the planet is fundamental. It is the engine that generates something invisible but absolutely vital for our survival of the Earth's magnetic field. This protective shield, generated by this incessant movement deep within, is what separates us from the hostile void of space. Without him, the silent apocalypse we mentioned at the beginning begins to take shape. But before we talk about the loss of this shield, we need to understand how it works and why it depends so much on this spinning metallic heart. The journey is getting hotter and more dangerous, so we have this metallic heart spinning and boiling in the depths, a colossal dynamo of liquid iron and nickel in constant motion. But how important is all this? Why is this underground turmoil so vital? The answer lies in something that we can neither see nor touch, but that protects us every second of every day, the Earth's magnetic field. Think of it as an invisible shield, a bubble of force that surrounds our planet, stretching thousands of kilometers into space. And this shield is generated precisely by that chaotic dance of the liquid outer core. It works more or less like this, and here science comes into play. Although the details are still hotly debated by geophysicists, the movement of the electrically conductive liquid metal, driven by the Earth's rotation and convection currents, heat rising from the solid inner core, creates gigantic electrical currents. It's the dynamo principle, similar to what happens in energy generators, but on an unimaginable planetary scale. These electrical currents, in turn, generate a powerful magnetic field. It is a self-sustaining process. The movement generates the field, and the field influences the movement. A complex cycle that has been operating for billions of years. And what is this magnetic shield for? Here things get serious. The sun, our vital star, doesn't just send us light and heat. It also constantly shoots a stream of charged particles, electrons and protons at high speed, the so-called solar wind. If this solar wind were to hit Earth directly without barriers, it would be devastating. It would rip out our atmosphere, molecule by molecule, sweeping it into space. Our oceans would evaporate. The surface would be bombarded by lethal radiation, capable of destroying DNA and making life, as we know it, impossible. Mars, today a cold, dry desert, likely lost its atmosphere and water this way after its own magnetic field disappeared billions of years ago. We are only here breathing, living, because our magnetic shield deflects most of this solar wind, forcing it to go around the planet. In addition to the solar wind, the magnetic field also protects us from high-energy cosmic rays, subatomic particles accelerated to speeds close to that of light, coming from supernova explosions and other violent events in the distant universe. Without this protection, the radiation on the surface would be unbearable. The beautiful northern lights and southern lights, those dancing lights in the polar skies, are actually visible proof of this cosmic battle, solar particles being channeled through the magnetic field and colliding with the gases of our upper atmosphere. They are a spectacular reminder of the invisible protection that surrounds us. So this magnetic field is not a luxury, it's an absolute necessity. It holds our atmosphere in place, protects our water, defends our biosphere from deadly radiation from space. And it all depends on that spinning engine down there, that pulsing core. Now start imagining what would happen if that engine started to fail. If the rotation that powers the dynamo started to slow down, to falter, the shield would begin to weaken. And that's when the countdown to 2045 starts to get really scary. 2045. Why this specific date? It seems arbitrary, perhaps even sensationalistic. But what if it isn't? What if there are signs, whispers from the depths that point to a drastic change approaching? In recent years, the scientific community has been abuzz with studies that suggest something disturbing. Earth's inner core may be slowing down. Some researchers even proposed that it had almost stopped rotating in relation to the surface, or even started a slight rotation in the opposite direction for a while. How do they know this? We can't just drill to the center of the Earth and put a speedometer there. The answer lies in seismic waves. the vibrations generated by earthquakes that travel across the planet. By analyzing how these waves change speed and direction as they pass through the inner core, scientists can infer information about its structure and, crucially, its rotation. It's like using a gigantic ultrasound to listen to the heart of the planet, and recent readings have been strange. Decades of seismic data seem to indicate that the rotation of the inner core is not constant. It oscillates, accelerates, and slows down in cycles that can last decades. Some studies suggest a cycle of approximately 70 years. Think about it, a 70-year cycle of acceleration and deceleration of this immense sphere of solid iron. And where would we be in this cycle? The most recent data published in 2023 and 2024 suggests that we may be in a phase of significant slowdown, perhaps one of the most pronounced ever observed since we began monitoring. Now, here comes the apocalyptic speculation, the what if that brought us here. Most scientists believe this is just part of the natural cycle, that the core will eventually accelerate again relative to the surface. But what if it isn't? What if this slowdown is different? What if the forces that drive rotation, the magnetic field of the outer core, and the gravitational pull of the mantle are changing in a more permanent way? What if this slowdown is the beginning of a complete shutdown? Current models don't predict this, but Earth has surprised us before. What guarantees that the cycles of the past will repeat themselves indefinitely in the future? This is where the date 2045 enters our end of the world narrative. It is not a scientific prediction set in stone, far from it. But imagine that this observed slowdown continues, that it represents not just the bottom of a cycle, but the beginning of a terminal trend. If we project this slowdown, if we assume that the restoring forces are weakening, when would the engine stop? 2045 becomes a symbolic milestone in this hypothetical scenario, a point in the future close enough to chill our spines, distant enough to seem plausible within a long-term trend. It's the silent countdown. Every second that passes, every day could be one less step in the rotation of our planetary dynamo. The invisible shield, which we discussed earlier, depends on this rotation. If the engine is failing, so is the shield. The first cracks in our cosmic armor may already be forming, imperceptible for now. The real question is what happens when the engine finally sputters and stops for good? It arrived! The day that no one predicted, or perhaps those few who dared to imagine, were labeled crazy. 2045. There was not a tremor, not a sound, not even a sigh from the depths. Far below, thousands of kilometers underground, the iron and nickel heart of the Earth, which had been spinning tirelessly for eons, simply stopped. Or more precisely, its differential rotation relative to the mantle has ceased. The engine turned off. On the surface, nothing changed instantly. The sun rose, the birds sang for now, people went to work, complained about the traffic, lived their digital lives. The apocalypse did not arrive with fire and brimstone, but with a terrifying silence in the bowels of the planet. A silence that meant the planetary dynamo had failed. And the first consequence, the most immediate and invisible, was the collapse of our protective shield. Earth's magnetic field did not magically disappear, but began to weaken and become chaotic at an alarming rate. Without the constant movement of the liquid outer core to support it, it began to dissipate, to lose its strength, its organized bipolar structure. Imagine a giant magnet losing its strength, its field lines becoming weak and disordered. This is what started to happen on a planetary scale. The first signs, subtle to most, were noticed by those who depended directly on the magnetic field. Compasses began to spin wildly, pointing nowhere. Navigation systems that used the magnetic field as a reference from ships and planes to the internal systems of some migratory animals began to fail catastrophically. Birds were lost in mid-flight, whales stranded on unknown beaches, unable to find their ancestral routes. Satellites in orbit, although not directly dependent on the magnetic field for navigation in the same way, began to suffer from the sudden increase in charged particles, resulting in more frequent electronic failures. But that was just the beginning, the tip of the invisible iceberg. The real danger was arriving from space. With the shield weakened, the solar wind, that constant stream of energetic particles from the sun, began to penetrate deeper into our atmosphere. And not just the solar wind, but also cosmic rays, much more energetic and dangerous, coming from the depths of the universe. radiation in the upper atmosphere began to increase exponentially. Astronauts on the International Space Station, if there still were one, would be in immediate mortal danger. Pilots and passengers on commercial flights at high altitudes began receiving significantly higher doses of radiation. On the surface, we still didn't feel the direct heat of this radiation, but the chemistry of our atmosphere began to change. The energetic particles colliding with the air molecules began to destroy the ozone layer at an unprecedented rate, much faster than any human pollution ever achieved. The planet's natural sunscreen was being eroded. The apocalypse was still silent to human ears, but scientific instruments around the globe recorded the unseen chaos unfolding. The shield had fallen. We were exposed, and the direct and brutal consequences of that exposure were about to start raining down on us. The shield fell. The Earth stood naked before the hostile cosmos, and the apocalypse, once silent and invisible, began to rear its ugly head, not with a scream, but with a slow, agonizing deterioration of everything we knew. Without the magnetic field to deflect the solar wind, our planet began to bleed its own atmosphere into space, molecule by molecule. The gases that make up our air, the oxygen we breathe, the nitrogen, everything began to be swept away by the relentless stream of particles coming from the sun. Imagine the air becoming thinner, day after day, year after year. Atmospheric pressure gradually decreasing, making breathing more difficult at lower and lower altitudes. The colors of the sky themselves changing, perhaps taking on strange pale tones as the atmospheric composition altered. And the radiation, the bombardment that was previously stopped in the upper layers of the atmosphere now reached the surface in full force. Going out into the daylight became an act of suicidal courage. Severe sunburn in a matter of minutes, even with cloudy skies. Skin cancer cases soared to epidemic levels, but that was just the beginning. Penetrating cosmic and solar radiation began to damage the DNA of all life forms. Mutations have become common, most of them deleterious. The infertility rate has increased dramatically. Living on the surface has become a slow and painful death sentence. Underground cities, maybe for a tiny elite, but the vast majority of humanity and life on Earth was exposed. The ozone layer, our natural sunscreen against the most harmful ultraviolet rays, has been pulverized. Without it, direct sunlight became a poison. Plants, the base of most food chains, struggled to carry out photosynthesis under the relentless UV attack. Many species simply died out, leading to widespread famine. The oceans, which cover more than 70% of the planet, were not a refuge. UV radiation penetrated the upper layers of the water, decimating phytoplankton, the microorganisms that form the basis of marine life and produce a significant portion of the oxygen we breathe. The seas began to die from top to bottom. And the water? The precious liquid water that makes Earth unique. As the atmosphere became thinner and radiation bombarded the surface, evaporation increased dramatically. Even worse, the solar wind began to dissociate water molecules in the upper atmosphere, breaking them down into hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen, too light, escaped into space forever. Earth began to dry out, a slow process that would gradually turn the blue planet into a red, barren desert like our neighbor Mars. Our technology, our advanced civilization, has proven to be terribly fragile. Without the magnetic shield, electrical grids became easy targets for solar storms, which now hit the planet unfiltered. Massive permanent blackouts have become the norm. Communication systems collapsed. The delicate electronics we depended on were fried by the constant radiation. Society as we knew it has regressed centuries in a matter of years, perhaps decades. This was the silent apocalypse, not an explosion, but the slow, inexorable creak of the planetary machine breaking down, taking with it all the conditions that allowed our existence. Life was being suffocated, irradiated, and dehydrated, all because the planet's heart had stopped spinning. Faced with such a devastating scenario, the question that echoes is almost a desperate whisper. Could we survive? Would there be any chance, however small, for humanity or life as we know it? The honest answer is probably not, at least not on the surface. The combination of atmospheric loss, radiation bombardment, and subsequent loss of liquid water would create conditions incompatible with complex life. Perhaps a few humans could seek refuge in extremely deep, self-sufficient underground bunkers protected by meters and meters of rock against radiation. But for how long? How would they obtain resources? How would they deal with the total collapse of the external biosphere on which we ultimately depend? It would be a precarious existence, a pale shadow of civilization, probably doomed in the long run. What about a technological solution? Could we create an artificial magnetic field to protect the planet? In theory, perhaps. But the scale and energy required would be astronomical, far beyond our current capabilities, and certainly impossible to implement following the collapse of global infrastructure caused by the initial effects of the core shutdown. It would be like trying to build a giant umbrella in the middle of a hurricane that has already destroyed your house and tools. The more likely truth is that the core shutdown would mean the end of the line for humanity and the vast majority of life on Earth. Perhaps some extremophile microbes could survive deep within the crust or in the remaining oceans, but the era of complex surface life would be over. It would be the lights going out, slow and silent, and so we come to the end of our hypothetical journey into the silent heart of a dying planet. Scary, isn't it? To think that something so fundamental, so intrinsically linked to our existence, like the rotation of the Earth's core, could simply cease, triggering a cascade of events that would bring us to the brink of extinction or perhaps beyond it. It's the kind of scenario that reminds us of our cosmic fragility, of our dependence on geophysical processes that we have barely begun to fully understand. The date 2045 is speculation, a focal point for our story today, but the science behind the importance of the nucleus and the magnetic field is real and undeniable. The studies on the slowdown are real, even if their final implications are still debated. What can we take away from all this? Perhaps a renewed sense of admiration for our planet, for this complex and delicate machine that sustains us. Perhaps a reminder that we are not the masters of the universe, just passengers on a rocky spaceship with an engine inside that will hopefully keep running for a long, long time. Exploring these extreme scenarios, these apocalyptic what-ifs, isn't to leave us paralyzed by fear, but to expand our minds, to make us think about the universe and our place in it in new and challenging ways. If you enjoyed this journey to the edge of survival, if your mind exploded with possibilities, and you want to continue exploring the most unfathomable mysteries and craziest hypotheses of the cosmos with us, then you know what to do. Leave that final like to show us that we've come this far together. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed, and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our future explorations. And of course, share this video. Send it to that group of friends, to family, to everyone who needs a good dose of what-ifs to shake up their day. The more curious minds we have here, the further we can go. Thank you so much for your company on this terrifying but fascinating journey. Your curiosity is the fuel that moves us. Stay tuned, because the next video with another question that will challenge your perception of reality is already appearing on the screen for you. Until next time.